Tonight, Canadian comedian and broadcaster Mike Bullard, dead at 67. Longtime stand-up and host, remembered for a complex past.
It's a complicated legacy. He was a troubled guy in some ways.
Oh! Anything from just broken poles to wire broken down on the ground.
Canadian crews help with hurricane recovery.
Our shift now is 3:30 in the afternoon till 7:30 in the morning.
The team's working to restore power to hundreds of thousands of people. The revival of a wartime housing effort.
The houses themselves were very well built.
The pre-approved design catalog to help speed up construction. Plus, a long-lost ship as never seen before.
What's really exciting about that is then you have like this 3D model.
New technology reveals details of an old mystery.
CTV National News with Heather Butts.
Good evening. We begin tonight with the death of stand-up comic and former TV host Mike Bullard. The controversial comedian rose to prominence as the host of 2 late-night talk shows. His family says the exact cause of death is not yet known. Here's CTV's Kamal Karamali.
Online on the Comedy Network and on CTV, it's your host, Mike Bullard.
His presence, quick wit, and tell-it-like-it-is attitude is what drew celebrities,
Tom, is there a dead thing in that bag?
politicians, and even animals
The monkey seems to like me a lot.
to sit down with Mike Bullard. The stand-up comic from Toronto rose to fame in the mid-90s, hosting Open Mic with Mike Bullard on Comedy Central and CTV.
What he did, a lot of people don't realize, it was impossible. He hosted a late-night talk show in Canada.
Bullard became a household name, landing 2 Gemini Awards during that 6-year run. But by 2003, he moved to global television, where the program was canceled after 3 months.
I don't like it when big things happen during my show.
Later, Bullard decided to make the shift to radio, hosting his own show in Toronto for 6 years. In 2016, a darker chapter of Bullard's life began. His employer dropped him after he was charged with criminal harassment of his ex-girlfriend.
It's a complicated legacy, for sure. And, he was a troubled guy in some ways.
A couple of years later, he pleaded guilty to making harassing phone calls. After 2 decades in the spotlight, Bullard spent much of his final years in the shadows, including 4 months in Ukraine to volunteer during the war.
There was an idealistic side to Mike Bullard that a lot of people didn't really see on the surface, because he's a gruff guy, but he's got a heart of gold.
His name etched in Canadian television history. Some will remember him for his more recent legal troubles, others as a charismatic talk show host.
If I can make a living there for the rest of my life, I'll be the happiest man in the world.
Mike Bullard was 67. Kamal Karamali, CTV News, Toronto.
Just weeks before the U.S. election, a man has been arrested for illegally possessing multiple guns outside Donald Trump's rally in Southern California.
He showed up with multiple passports with different names, an unregistered vehicle with fake license plate, and loaded firearms.
Saturday night in Coachella, California, a 49-year-old from Las Vegas was pulled over by deputies at a secure checkpoint near the rally before Trump arrived. He allegedly had a loaded firearm, shotgun, and high-capacity magazine. People in Florida are still picking up the pieces following 2 hurricanes. Close to 1 million homes in that state are still without power. Crews from Canada rushed in to help and are making a considerable effort to help those in the Sunshine State. CTV's Paul Hollingsworth has the latest.
Canadian Corrine Drover describes the damage in her St. Petersburg neighborhood as almost beyond description.
it would break your heart, because the second house coming in, you could see the sun shining in his living room. His roof was gone totally.
Last week, Nova Scotia Power scrambled to send employees to help deal with outages at the hands of Hurricane Milton. The next morning, 12 trucks loaded with staff and equipment made their way to the Sunshine State.
We have 35 people, myself, I have a logistics lead, a safety lead, a fleet supervisor, 2 mechanics, 4 line supervisors, and 24 power line technicians.
Hundreds of power technicians from across North America are on the ground in the Tampa area. Jason Stockless is with a crew of 16 from Newfoundland and Labrador.
Broken poles to wire broken and down on the ground to switches.
Workers are tirelessly on the job, mostly at night with minimal downtime.
It's 3:30 in the afternoon till 7:30 in the morning.
From a danger perspective, Nova Scotia Power workers typically have to be on the lookout for ticks when they go into wooded areas to repair downed power lines. Now in Florida, they suddenly find themselves watching for snakes and alligators.
They tell us, if we can, to get a picture of the snake, so they'll know if it's venomous or not.
It's dangerous and difficult work, but also rewarding.
We're getting people stopping their cars while in traffic and telling us how much they appreciate the fact that we showed up.
Nova Scotia Power will soon send a fresh team of 32 employees to relieve the group working through grueling conditions in Florida. They will stay until the job is done and power is restored. Paul Hollingsworth, CTV News, Halifax.
President Joe Biden toured the devastation in Florida today. Earlier, the U.S. announced an advanced anti-missile system to Israel, along with troops needed to operate it. Biden says the move was meant to defend Israel, even as Iran warned Washington to keep American military forces out of that country. Iran launched around 200 missiles at Israel at the beginning of this month. Israel is expected to strike back, though it hasn't said how or when. A Hezbollah drone attack on an army base in central Israel killed 4 soldiers and wounded several others. The Lebanon-based militant group called the attack retaliation for strikes on Beirut Thursday that killed 22 people. In Toronto, Jewish community leaders are calling on all levels of government to stamp out anti-Semitism after gunshots were fired at a girls' school on Yom Kippur, considered the most sacred and solemn day in Judaism.
The time for words is over. Action needs to take place before this gets worse and someone gets seriously hurt or even worse than that.
Remnants of broken glass remain at this Jewish elementary school. Some windows were shattered by bullets, but no one was inside at the time. Police haven't shared any information on potential suspects. It's the second time in 5 months this school was targeted by gunfire. Canada's long-promised federal housing catalogue was supposed to be unveiled this fall, but CTV News has learned it will be delayed until the end of the year, and it will be even longer before builders can begin construction using the standardized plans. CTV's Colton Prale on the delay and why some experts are skeptical of the plan.
In this Ottawa neighborhood is an old solution to a recurring problem.
People needed a place to live. People need a place to live now.
To deal with a major housing shortage after the Second World War, Canada built hundreds of thousands of homes based on standardized federal designs. They became known as strawberry box homes or victory homes.
The houses themselves were very well built.
Last year, Ottawa promised a new design catalog this fall to help tackle the current housing crisis. But CTV News has learned the designs won't be ready for builders until next year. Monday, the federal housing minister will announce that a suite of up to 50 concepts that include row homes, fourplexes, and sixplexes will be unveiled in December.
These might be a starting point for people to get ideas, but many of the bigger developers who are working on suburban sites, they already have templates, and that's not what this is targeted at.
Others argue it can help introduce density to established neighborhoods.
This is all about encouraging that type of gentle change that really makes the future brighter, at least for the next generation.
Builders say the government needs to look beyond wartime ideas. Instead, consider eliminating the sales tax on new homes and encourage municipalities to drop development charges.
It wasn't these set-piece designs. That wasn't what was happening then. What was happening then was it was a lot easier and simpler to build new housing.
Ottawa hasn't said how many of these homes it expects to be built, but according to the CMHC, Canada needs to build 3.5 million new homes by 2030.
Canada is already behind the pace to meet that target, and some builders say they expect home construction to slow even further in the near future. Heather.
Colton, thanks. As the Prime Minister faces mounting pressure from within his own caucus to step down, today the Liberal Party announced who will organize their campaign in the next election. Andrew Bevan is named as campaign director, a longtime Liberal insider. Most recently, he's been chief of staff to Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland and senior advisor to Justin Trudeau. Marjorie Michel is the new deputy campaign director. The party says she has deep roots in Quebec, a key battleground for the next election. The federal government is fighting a class action lawsuit over unsafe drinking water on First Nations. Ottawa has argued Canada has no legal obligation to provide the communities with clean drinking water. CTV's Alex Karpa explains.
This week, Manitoba's Shamattawa First Nation took the federal government to court, asking for help from Ottawa to provide clean drinking water for their community.
All of the class members have gone at least a year without water they can trust from their taps.
Under a boil water advisory since 2018, this remote community claims it's not only an inconvenience, but a violation of a fundamental right.
They've lived under long-term drinking water advisories, and they say the federal government has an obligation to help them to get safe drinking water in their homes.
Ottawa has argued Canada has no legal obligation to provide First Nation communities with clean drinking water.
When they hear that safe drinking water for their community is a matter of good governance but not a right, I can tell you it's profoundly disappointing.
All Canadians have a right to clean drinking water, and for one, I thought that we living in Canada, that as First Nations, we would have that right also.
Around 70,000 people from 60 First Nation communities, including Shamattawa, have joined the class action lawsuit. Advocates say the crisis has dragged out far too long.
I think if Brandon or Lloydminster or any other community across this land was in this same situation, I think the Canadian government would be acting on it quickly to make sure that those communities had clean drinking water.
To this day, over 30 First Nations communities are still under boil water advisories, despite a promise by the federal government to have them all lifted by 2021.
Imagine you're a young adult and not once in your life have you ever been able to open a tap, have a glass of water, and sometimes even bathe in water.
A judge has reserved his decision on the case following 3 days of arguments. There is still no set time as to when a decision on this matter will be made, but First Nations leaders are hoping it's sooner rather than later. Alex Karpa, CTV News, Winnipeg.
Coming up after the break.
An impaired driver drove his vehicle through the patio, killing my son.
Honoring a young life with an important message. A Canadian family is turning a horrific tragedy into a powerful push for change. Suffering the loss of a young child killed by a suspected drunk driver, they're honoring his memory by sending a message to drivers. CTV's Rachel Crowe Spreading Wings explains.
I can still see his beautiful face.
Mothers Against Drunk Driving Canada unveils the new truck decal to honor a life taken too soon.
Gio was such a light and just love. Gio was love.
Gio Monsef was only 2 years old when a suspected impaired driver tragically took his life. On May 19th, 2013, on the sunny patio of a restaurant, the family was celebrating the milestones of having small children.
Gio's success with potty training, and his little brother Quinton's turning 5 months old on that day. It was a very beautiful and happy day.
At the very moment the family raised their glasses and were toasting to life, everything changed.
An impaired driver drove his vehicle through the patio, killing my son.
CEO of MAD Canada, Don Regan, says Geo's photo and message will be placed on 20 of KAG's Canada's truck trailers.
Having a visual reminder shows people that we're not just statistics, that these are real life people, that it happened to them, it can happen to us, and that we all must do our part to make sure that we stay safe. And that's by not driving impaired.
These trucks will travel all over the country.
This was a really beautifully bittersweet memoriam of our baby Geo today, and it's an honor to have his face as a reminder of the lasting impacts that our decisions can carry.
The safety campaign has been on the road since 2012, and so far, 280 of KAG trucks have photos of impaired driving victims.
If we can save even one family from going through these tragedies, I'd say that's a good job.
Rachel Crowe, Spreading Wings, CTV News, Edmonton.
Still ahead, Shackleton's lost ship in new detail. A clear discovery of a murky resting place. It was one big leap for space engineering today as SpaceX returned Starship's booster right back onto its launch tower for the very first time. The spacecraft's booster was caught by the tower's monstrous metal arms 7 minutes after blastoff.
It's neat from a SpaceX perspective, but it's really important for NASA because this is part of the system that's supposed to put people back on the moon.
This was SpaceX's 5th Starship test flight, part of the company's push to build a reusable moon and Mars vehicle. New technology is shedding light on an old mystery. Hidden details of Ernest Shackleton's sunken endurance ship in Antarctica have now come to the surface. CTV's Anastasia Dextrine takes a deeper dive on the Canadian connection.
After more than 100 years submerged in the depths of Antarctica, a long-lost ship is revealed. These are images of Sir Ernest Shackleton's wreck, the Endurance. Thanks to new subsea scanning technology, 3D reconstruction, and a team of researchers, the vessel can be seen as if murky waters were drained away.
Cameras and laser scanners were put on an underwater vehicle, an autonomous underwater robot. And once the wreckage was found, one of the first tasks is actually mapping the ship.
Associate Professor of Mechanical Engineering James Forbes, who was involved in the project, says ensuring the accurate navigation of the robots was key.
What my McGill team facilitated was we collect laser point cloud data and we stitch together various laser images, which in turn enhances the navigation solution. If you have a very accurate navigation solution, then you can build a very accurate three-dimensional model of the wreck.
The Endurance went down in the Weddell Sea during Shackleton's Antarctic expedition of 1914. After getting trapped by ice, it sank more than 3,000 meters, but not a single life was lost. Fast forward to when the wreckage was discovered, as seen by this photo in 2022. Now, with today's advances, one can see human touches, like plates and dishware, and even Shackleton's boot.
There was a 3D photogrammetry model created using the images that were taken with the Voice camera. And what's really exciting about that is then you have like this 3D model. So it's more than just a 2D picture.
Professor Forbes says this technology could go beyond shipwrecks and lend itself to any number of submarine inspection tasks. Think underwater bridge and turbine inspections. Anastasia Dextrine, CTV News.
After the break, a former acrobat finds a new calling, coaching. A former acrobat is savoring a shift in career. The Calgary woman's newfound passion came after juggling a health scare, and now her story has inspired goalies to step up their game. Here's CTV's Tyler Barrow.
Training for the circus? That is a thing of the past for Tatiana Stratov. Now she's training hockey goalies.
It's been very similar for most things in my life. Something comes along my path, I get drawn in, and then before I know it, my whole heart is in it.
In 2015, she graduated from the National Circus School in Montreal. She was set to travel to Europe for a tour, but 48 hours before the plane was departing, her life took a turn for the worse. She was diagnosed with a rare bone disease, impacting the use of her right hand. not knowing if she would ever perform again. As her bone disease began to heal, the rest of her body began to break down. A battle she fought for 6 years until 2021. At one point, she was bedridden for a full year. She would seek treatment in Europe and finally start to feel like herself in 2022.
It's been a long journey, but I just can't imagine being back on stage, doing what I thought was going to be my life passion, because along the way I've discovered something that I love doing even more.
One of her friends who was working with goalies invited her to help. From there, she found her new passion. Now she runs Master Your Focus, helping approximately 300 goalies, which includes PWHL, WHL, and NCAA puck stoppers. For their training, she taps into her background with hand-eye exercises like juggling.
As a goalie, if you can move your head a little bit less and be able to see more, that's ideal, and that's what this training is specifically helping them towards.
And goalies say it's paying off.
It's made me a better goalie with my tracking and reaction time.
It's helped my eyes get warmed up and firing before games.
No matter what obstacle you face, there's always a way to overcome it.
Tyler Barrow, CTV News, Calgary.
And that is our newscast for this Sunday evening. I'm Heather Butts on behalf of all of us here at CTV National News. We wish you a happy Thanksgiving. Good night, and I will see you again tomorrow.